7 extraordinary African kingdoms from ancient times to centuries ago. There's much more to ancient Africa than just Egypt. Let's remember that Moses was a prince of Egypt, but he was also the prince of Ethiopia, which is south of Egypt. Many modern histories tend to focus on ancient kingdoms and empires around the Mediterranean and in the Fertile Crescent, that is around Babylon, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. But Western versions of history tend to overlook the many significant kingdoms in Africa. Here are 7 of the most notable African kingdoms and empires who had complex cities, trade routes, riches, and cultures. One was the Mali Empire. The Mali Empire ruled much of West Africa starting in 1235, when a confederation of kingdoms overthrew a region's Soso Empire. At its height in the 14th century, the Mali Empire ruled over 400 cities in modern Senegal, Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Ivory Coast, northern Ghana, southern Mauritius, Mali, northern Burkina Faso, and western Niger. Only the Mongol Empire and the Inca Empire were larger than at that time. I think the fact that such a large and powerful polity has been left out of history books for so long is rather shameful, Sergio Casos Donne, archaeologist at the Spanish National Research Council, said. Such a vast empire seems to have been ruled as a confederation of territories, each with a different relationship to the empire. Some were practically independent, but others were ruled by appointed governors, she said. The Mali Empire controlled the region's gold, and its ruler, Mansa Musa, has been called the world's richest man. This is based on the trip to Cairo in 1324 during his pilgrimage to Mecca, where he brought so much gold he devalued the price of gold for almost 2 decades, Kanostani said. But the empire withered after the 15th century as its control of the gold trade declined. Number 2, the Kingdom of Axum. Although little known today, the Kingdom of Axum was one of the most powerful kingdoms in the ancient world. Located beside the Red Sea in what are now northern Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Yemen, the Kingdom of Axum was a hub for ivory, gold, spices, and textiles from the 1st century BC to the 9th century AD, and traded with the Roman Empire. But its origins may be much older, dating to the pre-Axumite period as far back as 1600 BC. Michael Harrower, an associate professor of archaeology at Johns Hopkins University, said that Axumite period may only have been a change of the kingdom's capital from Yeha to Axum. The Axumites developed their own system of writing and body of literature, and in the 4th century, Axum became the first kingdom in Africa to convert to Christianity. Just why it did so is not certain, Harrower said. Well, maybe it's because St. Mark, the son, the spiritual or adopted son or biological son of St. Peter, was the bishop there. Now, Axum became the first kingdom in Africa to convert to Christianity. Just why it did so is not certain, Harrower said, but the traditional story is that the Axumite kingdom, the king Ezana, was converted by a Greek-speaking youth from Tyre named Erumentius, who had been shipwrecked on the coast. After the 7th century, the Arab caliphates controlled the Red Sea and the Axumite kingdom declined, but later kingdoms continued their tradition of Christianity. Number 3, the Kingdom of Kush. The Kingdom of Kush was located on the Nile in a region called Nubia in what are now northern Sudan and southern Egypt. The region was ruled by Egypt until about 1070 BC, when the Kushites established an independent kingdom. From around 712 to 664 BC, they ruled over their former rulers as Egypt's 25th dynasty, also known as the Nubian dynasty, which lasted until the Syrians installed a puppet regime in Egypt. Like many ancient Egyptians, the Kushites worshipped Amun as the supreme god and buried their esteemed dead in pyramid tombs, but they had a distinctly different language ethnicity, and culture, including their own system of writing. The Kingdom of Kush developed from the Kerma culture, which had occupied Nubia from about 2500 BC. After the defeat in Egypt, the Kushite capital was Moroe, the ruins which can now be seen about 120 miles northeast of Khartoum in what is now Sudan. In the 4th century, the kingdom began to decline amid a drying climate, and eventually the Kushites were displaced by the region's Noba people. It finally came to an end around 330 when Moroe was sacked by the neighboring Axumites. Number 4 is the Kingdom of Zimbabwe. The Kingdom of Zimbabwe was founded by the Shona people of central southern Africa in about 1200 and lasted about 1600. For a long time, little is known about the kingdom except the ruins at Great Zimbabwe, located about 165 miles south of Harare, the capital of modern Zimbabwe. The massive abandoned city, made from stones without mortar, is the largest stone structure in pre-colonial southern Africa, and it covers several square miles and was home to up to 18,000 people. Most of it is still unexcavated, but recent research has determined that the city's builders overcame an extreme shortage of water by storing it in pits called dakas. Springs and rainwater fed an urban population of ruling elites, religious leaders, craftsmen, and merchants. Innocent P. Kirai, professor of archaeology and head of the Department of Anthropology and Archaeology at the University of Pretoria, South Africa, said, "The sophisticated irrigation system allowed the cultivation of crops, and Great Zimbabwe traded gold, copper, and ivory between other parts of Africa and the Middle East." Historians think Great Zimbabwe flourished until it was eclipsed in the 15th century by the rising kingdom of Mutapa, based north of Harare. 5. The Kingdom of the Garamantes. The Kingdom of the Garamantes thrived in the Frisian region of what is now southwestern Libya after about 400 BC. Historians once thought it was a minor kingdom, but decades of research have revealed it consists of several large cities fed by a unique irrigation system that transports water in underground tunnels from nearby ancient aquifers in the desert sandstone, which had formed millions of years earlier. These tunnels, or fogaras as they're called, allowed the Garamantes to cultivate crops and maintain their kingdom in the heart of the Sahara, trading mostly in gold, ivory, and slaves from the south. The Garamantes were also a powerful military force with a well-trained army equipped with chariots, horses, and camels, and the Garamantes used to expand their territory and protect their trade routes. Eventually, the aquifer water level fell too low to feed the fogaras, however, and the kingdom of the Garamantes began to decline in the 2nd century BC. After the 1st century AD, the Garamantes were dominated by the settlements of the emerging Roman Empire along the North Africa's coast, but some Garamantian cities in the Fezzan remained occupied until at least the 11th century. The Kingdom of Benin, and this is a statue of the goddess Irhevbu, or Princess Edeleyo from the Benin Kingdom, what is now Nigeria. The Kingdom of Benin was located in what's now southern Nigeria from about 12th to 19th centuries. It's also known as the Edo Kingdom from the name of its capital city and the ethnic group that founded it. However, it has nothing to do with the modern Republic of Benin, which after a 1975 coup took its name from the nearby coastal region known as the Bight of Benin. The Kingdom of Benin has a major center of learning and trade. It was a center of learning and trade, but in the 17th century, it also became a major source of slaves for the colonization of Americas. From the 15th century, however, Benin was famous for its bronze sculptures, like this beautiful sculpture. Look at the beautiful detail on it. It's amazing. Even the curls on the head. The sculptures often portrayed Now, the bronze sculptures, which were made from metal rings called manilas, imported by the Portuguese, the sculptures often portrayed eminent people in a unique style, and thousands were stolen and exported around the world after the kingdom was conquered by Britain in 1897. The region then became part of colonial Nigeria and then part of independent Nigeria in 1960. Nigeria has called for the Benin bronzes to be returned to the country. And then we have the very well known, of course, Zulu Kingdom is the seventh empire. The Zulu Kingdom developed from the Zulu ethnic group in southern Africa with the ascent of a man named Shaka Zulu in the 18th century, and it still survives today as part of the modern South Africa. According to James Gump, a professor emeritus of history at the University of San Diego and author of The Dust Rose Like Smoke, The Subjugation of the Zulu and the Sioux, Nebraska Press, 1994, Shaka was the illegitimate son of a chief of the Zulu people who was exiled to live among the powerful Mthewa clan. And as a military leader, he introduced the short stabbing spear and the winged battle formation, and he later became the ruler of the Mthewa. Eventually, his strength grew, and by the early 19th century, he led 40,000 warriors and dominated the people of the region, including the Zulus. Shaka's military developments were successfully used by his successors against the British in the Battle of Isandiwana in January 1879, and the Battle of Rorke's Drift a day later, which was depicted in the 1964 movie Zulu. By the end of the year, however, Britain had won the war, and thereafter the Zulu suffered partition, civil war and repression, Gump said in an email to Life Science. They also suffered egregiously in the 20th century from segregation and apartheid, which led to ethnic violence in the 1980s and 90s. But in the 21st century, the Zulu have emerged as a key part of modern South Africa, where they make up almost a quarter of the population. And this is by Tom Metcalf on Life Science. I find this fascinating. We really don't know enough about the archaeology and anthropology of Africa, and it's very rich, as we can see. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.